Deemed rehabilitated and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
All right, welcome to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Guys, I'm going to be talking to you today about abolishing the ATF. It is no longer enough for Republican candidates. I don't care if it's Donald Trump. I don't care if it's Ron DeSantis to run for office and say tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts. First off, I'm getting a little insulted that this is a constant argument. These people should give us our money back based upon how much they're spending in Washington, D.C. It's absolutely insane. They spend like drunken sailors. It is Joe Biden that is responsible for the inflation, as well as the COVID spending in the last year of Trump's administration. It's absolutely insane, and we're paying the price for it. So I'm sorry. Don't come to me with your weak arguments about tax cuts. It's my money anyway. So I'm so frustrated with that. We need more. We need to abolish some of these bureaucratic agencies. I believe the ATF is one of them. Listen, I some of these things that I'm going to say perhaps today, I would not have said just a couple of years ago. But we look at where the United States, how far it has gone, how far it's shifted to the left, how far it's shifted towards communism, outright communism in the last couple of years. And I don't think that we can take our freedoms for granted anymore. We have slipped so far away from constitutional principles in just the last couple of years. It is not even funny. So I'm going to delve into this issue on the ATF and what they're up to now, because they are literally tracking poor people. Yeah, I mean financially poor people. They are tracking poor people and they are surveilling them. And I'm going to explain to you why, because it's not necessarily legal. Actually, it's not legal because they're doing warrantless tracking of these people. So stay tuned for some quick program messaging, and then we're going to dive into this subject. I've told you earlier this week that I believe Joe Biden is America's first dictator in the making. I'm getting ready to prove it to you again. This is the Carl Jackson Show. Stay tuned. Quick program messaging. We'll be right back. All right. Thank you for tuning in again to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Guys, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. You can go to thecarljacksonshow.com, Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. We really would like to build up our YouTube page, a Rumble page as well. So if you go to The Carl Jackson Show, you can find us there. Also on our social media platforms, The Carl Jackson Show is where you can find us on the social media platforms. I do want to tell you quickly about MyPillow.com. Mike Lindell at MyPillow has built a fabulous company. He is a patriot, Mike Lindell is, and right now they've got the buy one, get one free offer for the MyPillow 2.0. That is right, buy one, get one free for the MyPillow 2.0. It comes with the same patented feel as the original MyPillow, but now it's got this new outer layer, this new thread that they're using for this outer layer of the MyPillow 2.0 that keeps it nice, smooth, and cool. It dissipates heat. All right. So you feel cooler when you sleep and it feels smoother. You're going to absolutely love it. All you have to do to take advantage of the buy one, get one free deal for a MyPillow, the MyPillow 2.0, is go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener square at the top of the page, enter my name, Carl, C-A-R-L, or give them a call, 800-858-0263, 800-858-0263. Okay, now, let's get to this topic on the ATF. And guys, there's a lot that's going on in the news today. I'm not going to go through Jackson's 5 like I normally do. Frankly, I'm going to be in for the Officer Tatum tonight and virtually all of next week with the exception of Thursday. So what I'm going to be doing is doing some focused podcast for you. I'm not going to be doing all of the news of the current day. You will hear me do that later on Officer Tatum's show, but I will make sure that you have new podcasts to listen to and fresh podcasts to listen to for next week. So we will be recording our podcast, but more the news stuff I'm going to be carrying over to Officer Tatum's show just for the sake of time and efficiency. I'll just give you some quick headlines, although I'm not going to go through them that much. Yellen assures Senate Finance Committee that the U.S. financial system remains sound. I'll get into that tonight on Officer Tatum's show. That is a doggone lie. Guys, I want you to be very careful about these people. Please get your own house in order. That's all I can tell you. Get your own house in order to the best of your ability. Get out of debt as quickly as possible. Make sure that you have tangible assets and things that you can that might be good to barter with and trade. I don't know where the world is going, but it looks like it's getting pretty crazy. Hence what we saw with the Russian Air Force basically attacking one of our U.S. drones. And the reason why we have so many external threats from our foreign adversaries is because they know that America is weak internally. They can see what the left is doing, trying to collapse the United States of America, and the world is watching, and dictators around the world, whether it's Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, Iran, the Ayatollah Khamenei, they're taking advantage of our weakness, taking advantage of Joe Biden. Bank records reveal that Joe Biden's daughter-in-law, Haley Biden, received China cash, apparently upwards or right around $35,000 she got in 2017, 2 transfers, probably hush money. So another Biden family member caught up in money that was received from the Chinese energy company. Poland is the first NATO member to send fighter jets to Ukraine. Stuff is getting real around the country. No doubt about that. A couple of other headlines that I'll just get to, but I won't dive into too deeply. Republicans fight to protect Second Amendment rights through a new Senate bill. Thank God they're looking to codify basically the law last year, the high court's ruling, the SCOTUS's ruling, New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, which was a 6-3 decision, basically saying New Yorkers can carry weapons they have a Second Amendment right to self-defense. So that is a good sign. There's something else, Department. Oh, I'll get into that later tonight. Okay, let me just read this one. Department of Justice, Biden's DOJ plans to indict hundreds more for January 6th. Guys, they're going to keep this narrative going that people like you and I, people that were mostly peaceful protesters in Washington, D.C., deserve to be jailed, deserve to be punished. They're going to be treated as domestic terrorists, unfortunately, just so they can keep this narrative going. They don't care if they ruin lives. So you have to understand that's who we're dealing with. And, you know, I sit here and it's getting harder and harder because I told myself, you know what, on Fridays, I want to be a little lighter. And that is going to be my goal in the future because let's face it, we all just need a breather from this crap sometimes. But I do want to tell you about what's going on. I don't take freedom lightly. I know if you're listening to this podcast, you don't take freedom lightly. And so I want to make sure that I share this information that I get in this research that I get with you. And I'm so honored and privileged that you were willing to trust me with that and that you're in the fight with me. All right. So the Epic Times earlier this week wrote a column, someone at the Epic Times, exclusive ATF gains financial information on potential gun buyers for warrantless tracking. This according to documents. And I want to go through this column because what the ATF is doing, and I believe that the ATF needs to be abolished. I believe a lot of these bureaucratic agencies are completely redundant. And as I get into this story, you'll understand how the ATF, there's a bit of redundancy between the ATF and even the IRS, if you can believe it. So we can get away with abolishing a lot of these, or several of these, I should say, several of these departments that exist in Washington, D.C., because the reason they exist to get away with stuff your politician can't. Basically, Joe Biden wants to ban guns, wants to do a run around the Second Amendment. They can use institutions like the IRS, whether it's hiring 87,000 new agents. They can use the ATF in order to circumvent the will of the people. And so a lot of unsuspecting Americans will be taken advantage of and will buy into this notion that all guns are bad. Because that's all the media plays on television. Again, as I explained the other day, they never show the good guys, the good guys that are stopping bad guys with guns. Good guys with guns stopping bad guys with guns, or females that are stopping bad guys with guns. So here's the summary. The federal government has been using Americans' income and gun purchases to conduct warrantless tracking and deny Second Amendment rights. You heard me right. Agents from the ATF, that's alcohol, tobacco, and firearms and explosives, gave salary estimates to the FBI as the reason to have people's firearms purchases monitored. Let me read that again. The ATF gave salary estimates, in other words, what people are making, the income that people are bringing in, to the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, as the reason to have people's firearms purchases monitored. No one committed a crime. People are going out and purchasing firearms either because they want to defend themselves, they want to hunt, maybe it's both. Criminals rarely purchase firearms legally. Most oftentimes they get them somewhere off the street. But oftentimes, or a few times I should say, they do purchase them legally, and then they're just a nut. And oftentimes signs have been missed that should have been caught. Now, here's a quote from the senior vice president of the Gun Owners of America, a gentleman by the name of Eric Pratt. And he said ATF's activities, and again, that's the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives Task Force in Washington, D.C., are monitoring innocent people, quote unquote. And he goes on to say, it's a serious problem, and Congress needs to rein in this rogue agency by either exercising oversight over it or abolishing the unconstitutional agency altogether. And I would say they need to abolish it. I'm way past this notion that Congress can legitimately, can't get my words out today, Gabe, exact oversight over these institutions. They can't. These institutions are so deep, it seems to me, with a bunch of woke people that don't believe in our founding principles. And I think the only way that we can get our Constitution back, the only way that we can save America, is to get rid of these institutions. Because, again, our politicians are making a runaround. They don't want to be held accountable for taking your civil liberties away. So they'll use these agencies to circumvent your vote and to make sure that people aren't holding them accountable to take away your freedoms. All right. So the Gun Owners of America had to sue the ATF for a FOIA request, essentially. All right. So the latest production from the FOIA, according to the Epoch Times, has hundreds of pages, many of which have been redacted, but they show that ATF agents requested warrantless surveillance by the FBI for lawful reasons such as low salaries, past firearm purchases, or if you just sent a text that sounded bizarre. Warrantless. So they didn't go to a judge. They're not necessarily, they're looking for a crime. There isn't a crime that has been committed. This is absolutely insane. We are living in crazy town. The FBI has been secretly tracking people by the NICS system. And for those of you, when Biden says, okay, we need universal background checks. Guys, we already have universal background checks. Anyone that has purchased a gun legally knows this. So what Biden is hoping to do is to use useful idiots. And I don't mean to call you an idiot if you're not, if you don't know this, but that's the way the left sees you. But you don't have this information, except now you do. You have the knowledge, but there's already a background system in place. All right. So as soon as you buy a firearm legally, you have a background check right on the spot. It's called the NICS system, NICS. It's the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, and that exists for gun purchases. All right. But the reason the FBI has this secret monitoring service is to track people. They want to track people. And again, for low salaries, past firearm purchases, or if they simply sound bizarre. They're concerned that some of the gun purchasers are potentially violating law. Potentially violating law. So they haven't violated any law. They're just utilizing their Second Amendment rights. Let me give you a couple of examples of what's going on. Here are instances in which the ATF deemed an American citizen too poor to own a gun. Now, does the Second Amendment say your right to bear arms shall not be infringed unless you're poor? No, of course it doesn't. But apparently that's what the ATF believes. Here's a man that is in Arizona, the state of Arizona. According to the document, that were received by the gun owners of America and their FOIA requests, a man in Arizona was put into the NICS daily monitoring because he has a quote unquote reported income of only $2,839. Now, I don't know if that means annually or monthly. The ATF agent wrote, quote, "In my experience, someone with this amount of income would not be able to afford 20 firearms," close quote. Now, what's the problem with that? Your income is none of the ATF's damn business. This is absolutely insane. Here's another example. This is an Asian man in Texas. He was put on the manual background check system because the ATF said he has, quote unquote, no work history, which they said, quote, could possibly indicate, close quote, that he is a, quote unquote, straw purchaser. Now, a straw purchaser is someone who buys a firearm for someone else that's probably not supposed to have one. Maybe it's a father buying one for a son. Watch out for that, because the ATF wants to go after you for that. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to go after the people that they know would fight back against the federal government. That's essentially what it comes down to. So they're figuring out the people that they have to be aware of, and they're creating a system to trace you, to follow you, a list, if you will, of law-abiding citizens that they need to be aware of, not for the sake of criminality, but for the sake of freedom. Understand that. Now, this happened in Kansas. Here's another example. A special agent in Kansas emailed ATF's liaison at the NICS to flag 2 purchasers for potential trafficking. Well, Carl, isn't trafficking firearms a bad thing? Well, let's read on. The agent wrote, and I quote, "My targets are purchasing an abundance of firearms without a license or known financial means to obtain the product." Now, I'm sorry, you don't necessarily have to have a license to buy a buttload of firearms, and we'll get into that, and the ATF knows that because it's on their own website, and I'll talk about that shortly. So the FBI's NICS expert instructed this agent in Kansas on what to do to include to ensure approval for tracking the suspects. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? 2 guys, my targets are purchasing an abundance of firearms without a license or known financial means to obtain the product. So what? So what? So, and then again, the FBI's NICS expert instructs this agent in Kansas on what he needs to do, or she, to ensure approval for tracking the suspects. So he says here, and I quote, I'm assuming it's a guy, "I would suggest covering the lack of income versus expenditures, and also if there is substantial make model duplication." The ATF agent emailed back with the incomes for each man acquired by the Kansas Department of Labor. Oh man, this is just astonishing to me. Now, here's how they go about tracking income. Gun rights activists say federal law enforcement is totally missing the mark on this issue, by the way. Eric Pratt, he's the senior vice president for Gun Owners of America. He said this, and I quote, "The poor usually live in areas with the most crime and thus have a strong need to arm themselves heavily. So targeting the indigent is simply another avenue for gun grabbers, as he calls them, to implement a backdoor gun ban." And that's exactly what it is. A lot of these people in poor areas, they will probably live in crime-ridden areas. Don't they deserve the right to protect themselves? Of course they do. We're all protected by the Second Amendment under the Constitution. Now, I realize some people will get hyped up and scared over the news stories that they see on television, and they're willing to relinquish their Second Amendment right. I'm not one of them. And we shouldn't have an agency that goes around arbitrarily trying to undermine our Second Amendment rights. ATF headquarters, this is crazy. This is crazy. I almost forgot to outline this. ATF headquarters will not disclose how it acquired the other suspects' incomes, employment information, and past gun purchases found in the FOIA forms. So they won't talk about this stuff. Oh man, that makes me think of another story. I'm not sure if you guys heard about this guy that created memes that's against Hillary Clinton. In 2016, he was a Trump supporter. Kid is facing 10 years in prison for creating memes. They're trying to prosecute him under the AntiKK Act. The left is trying to prosecute him under the AntiKK Act. The AntiKK Act that was passed by Republicans, by the way, to stop the terrorism of the Democrat Party. The KKK were a terrorist organization by the Democrat Party, or formed by the Democrat Party in Pulaski, Tennessee, to scare off black and white Republicans alike from voting. It's amazing. It's amazing. What we're dealing with right now is nothing less than a president in the White House that is really trying to become a dictator, in my opinion. He is really fundamentally transforming America. He's having great success at it. I hate to admit it. The guy with dementia is having great success. It's been very intimidating. It's been very intimidating. This is from, this is from Eric, an ATF spokesman from spokesman Eric Longnecker told the Epic Times. Again, the reason why he's telling this, what I'm about to quote to the Epic Times, is because the ATF headquarters would not disclose how they get information about suspects. And I don't know why I'm saying suspects, because thus far they haven't shown that these guys are doing anything legal, but this is the way it's written. All right. About the suspect's incomes, employment information, and past gun purchases. All right. So the ATF said, we are unable to discuss specific techniques utilized in criminal investigations. What criminal investigation? What crime did they commit? ATF utilizes a multitude of legal means, he goes on to say, in our criminal investigations to protect our communities from violent gun crime, except there's been no violent gun crime by these people that they're tracking. The Epic Times was referred to the National Tracing Center. This is a website that has information about, quote, several overt programs such as multiple sales and demand letters that can be helpful in identifying illegal firearms trafficking. I got to make sure I turn this down. I've got all types of noise popping up. All right. So now here we go to what they're doing. So we went to you're too poor to own a gun. The ATF is tracking people, warrantless surveillance, warrantless tracking. Then you might be buying too many guns, according to the ATF. Even if you don't commit a crime, even if you're not a criminal, even if you don't have a criminal past, you might be buying too many guns. And that's a problem for the ATF. All right. So now there's a black man in Florida. I hope it's not me. No, it's not me. I don't think so. A black man in Florida was monitored daily by the FBI for at least 90 days. This occurred in 2020 because an ATF agent wrote, based on my training, and I'm quoting, in my experience, I have not seen a legal firearms purchaser purchase approximately 30 firearms in a 120-day window for their personal collection, close quote. Although licensed firearms dealers must report to ATF the sale of 2 or more handguns to the same purchaser within 5 consecutive business days, there is no federal law limiting the number of guns a person can buy. Did you hear that? There is no federal law limiting the number of guns a person can buy. So why is the ATF wasting their time? It's because they're putting you on a list. They're doing to you, or they want to do to you, exactly like they're doing to the J6 protesters. They want to create this narrative that freedom-loving Americans, patriots, which is a dangerous word, one of the words that we know those in Washington, D.C. use to describe domestic terrorists, patriots. Unbelievable. Unbelievable what we're living through. But these people have committed no crime. They've committed no crime. Here's a quote from the attorney of the for Gun Owners of America, a gentleman by the name of Robert Olson, and he says this: some agent just decided that is enough Second Amendment for you this year. Speaking of the black man that purchased a lot of firearms, think about that. That is enough Second Amendment for you. We're going to decide that. No, you didn't elect us. No, you didn't know this was happening. You didn't know that we were tracking you. We didn't know that you were tracing. You didn't know, or You didn't know that we were tracing you, but we are. We are, because we can. Not because you've done anything illegal, not because you're a threat to society, but for some reason you like firearms. Could be that thing called the Constitution, ATF. Now, when it comes to buying and selling guns, an ATF agent saw a text that he or she did not like. A Wisconsin man was put under surveillance this in 2020 because an ATF agent saw text messages, don't ask me how, related to buying and selling guns, suspected dealing without a license. Suspected it. No evidence of it, just suspected it. Because he or she saw a text. The agent said the man bought guns from the website gunbroker.com, legal website. I've gone there before. Transferred them to a local gun store. So the guy did the right thing, did the legal thing. He goes to gunbroker.com. He transfers the guns through a local gun store. You know why you do that? To make sure you can get a background check. And then he resold the firearms using email, text messaging, and the website armslist.com. So Epic Times says there's more redacted black markings than visible information on this form, but it does not disclose the number of guns the suspect bought and sold. Now, here's what it says on the ATF's own online guide. And I told you I would get to this. And it says here, this is on the ATF's online guide. It explains, quote, if you only make occasional sales of firearms from your personal collection, you do not need to be licensed. It also says, and that end quote, it also says, quote, it also says you will need a license if you repetitively buy and sell firearms with the principal motive of making a profit, close quote. So if it's something you're doing all the time, and they don't describe it in great detail. I don't know if that means daily, weekly. I don't know what that means. But if you're occasionally selling firearms from your personal collection, you do not need to be licensed. Maybe it's once a year, maybe it's once a month. I don't know. They don't even say specifically, but this is on their website. This is another thing that ATF seems to be concerned about. Too many gun parts. What about people that have gun parts? Too many gun parts. In the secret documents, an ATF agent asked the FBI to flag a man in Arizona suspected of dealing parts of guns. Okay. The ATF agent said, in my experience, it is common for people to purchase large number of AR-15 style lower receivers, build them into rifles, and sell the rifles for profit. Okay. I wonder if they're only doing that occasionally. I wonder if these people are threats to society. Had they committed a crime beforehand? No, they don't say anything like that. They go on to explain a lower receiver is the base part of an AR-15 style rifle that has the serial number. So the bottom part, it cannot fire without the barrel. It cannot fire without the trigger, of course, and other parts on it. But the ATF is very concerned about this for some reason. So the GOA, Gun Owners of America attorney, said, and I quote, it is common for people to buy several lower receivers and build them into finished guns. If it's your hobby, that is not sufficient to prove you are illegally dealing firearms. Yeah, they haven't watched these people sell them. I mean, except the one person on armslist.com that went through the legal means, gunbrokers.com, to a local gun store, to armslist.com. Totally legal. Totally legal. How does the agent, the attorney for Gun Owners of America, ask, how does the agent distinguish between the Second Amendment enthusiasts and the criminals? And that is the question. Because notice, in all of these people they've been tracing or tracking, there's been no crime committed. They just have the audacity to do it because they have a dictator in the White House. I would not doubt if these orders have been spread down. Now, when it comes to bizarre messages, here's another thing. The Epic Times talks about a Missouri man was put into NICS after an ATF agent emailed that a, quote, U.S. Attorney's Office asked that we monitor his activity due to recent threats and bizarre messages he has been leaving. Okay, what has the guy been saying? I mean, the guy could be nuts. The agent wrote that the man, quote, was recently released from the Bureau of Prisons and has begun making threats towards the U.S. Attorney's Office federal judge. and ATF case agent. The completed form does not indicate the man has committed a felony, which would mean he would be in the NICS and prevented from buying a gun at the point of sale. So sending bizarre messages is not something that makes you lose your Second Amendment rights. As crazy as that sounds, it doesn't make you lose your Second Amendment rights. Sometimes people say the craziest crap when they're in a distressed situation. He sounds like a bad guy, but it's not connected to firearms. That's a huge misuse of the background check process. Now, anonymous tips. The ATF's law enforcement role is to investigate when a prohibited person completes a 4473 gun background check and the NICS denies the purchase. So the ATF is supposed to come in if the person is illegally buying a firearm. And since there already are universal background checks under the federal NICS system, this person would pop up into the system. In one case in the files, the ATF appears to have a woman tracked before the investigation has been done and based on an anonymous tip. So these people are undermining your Second Amendment rights. They're taking your Second Amendment right from you. This is what they're doing. I think Dan Bongino, who says this often, they're creating a list. This is true. They're creating a list of people like you and I, people that love America, people that are not criminals, people that just happen to love firearms for sport, God forbid, for self-defense, for hunting, or whatever it may be. But these are the people that Washington, D.C. and these bureaucratic agencies perceive as a threat. People that actually love America, people that actually love the Constitution. We are living in scary times. Guys, do not let your guard down. Do not hesitate to use your phone or to pick up and call your congressman or senator at any given time to express your concern on these issues. Even state and local officials. A woman texted me yesterday. She's a local activist here, conservative activist in the Orlando area, and there was an election, not well known, that was occurring in a city nearby, and she said not a lot of Republicans showed up, hardly any. She was out there trying to get the word out, and apparently a very important election because apparently this city hired or elected somebody that's pretty woke into the whole gender nonsense. So it still is happening in Florida. And she says it's because Republicans simply didn't show up. Now, she attributed to Republicans just being tired and discouraged, but sometimes people just don't know. But we have to stay on the alert, and I suspect it's the latter. Sometimes you have off-year elections that are just on weird dates like yesterday, and people just simply aren't aware. But we have to stay vigilant. We have to stay aware. We have to keep our guard up in order to restore constitutional principles in America, because we are living in a post-Christian, post-constitutional America. I'm sorry to say it, but I believe that to be true with my whole heart. Guys, listen, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Please support MyPillow.com. Fabulous company, American jobs, American products, American manufacturing. MyPillow.com. Take advantage of the exclusive deal to get a buy one, get one free offer of the new MyPillow 2.0. Again, the same patented feel on the inside, but now it has this new threaded outer layer that dissipates heat, makes it even smoother, softer, cooler when you put your head on it for a good night's rest. MyPillow 2.0, MyPillow.com. Use the promo code Carl at the top of the page, CARL. All you do is click on the radio listener square at the top of the page, or give them a call. 800-858-0263 if you prefer. 800-858-0263. And until next time, don't grow weary doing good. Oh, follow me on social media. Subscribe to our podcast. Por favor. All right. The Carl Jackson Show on YouTube. We're on The Carl Jackson Show. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, True Social. Get it. Find us there, please. And until next time, do not grow weary doing good. God bless you.